Tom, welcome to Digital Transformation Bite Size. This is a series where I interview experts in the digital transformation, social media, and data analytics world. You're very welcome today.
Lovely to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Fantastic. Tom, for those people who do not know who you are, would you mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about what you do on a daily basis?
Absolute pleasure. Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Tom Telford. I'm the Managing Director of Search, Social and Analytics at Clarity. So we're an integrated comms agency with offices in the east and west coast of America and in London, Cornwall and in Amsterdam.
You were a traditional agency at one stage, and then the world of digital transformation or digital evolution happened. How has that impacted a traditional agency? What are you now doing that's different in this digital world?
It's a really good question. And I think digital gets bandied around a lot. Like, everything's kind of digital. If you do traditional comms, things are still going out on the internet. If you media relations, you might go in the newspaper, but it's also going to go on the website. So digital it's a really interesting topic. I think it's different things to different people. But from our perspective, it's about a sort of omni-channel approach. So looking at how we use the amazing relationships and media relationships that we have, as you'd imagine an agency of our size to have, but also looking at what the outcomes there with SEO. How do we boost stories of paid? How are we integrating the work that we're doing on behalf of our clients with social? And of course, then how are we measuring that? So digital for us is around a broader approach, often centering the digital side, centering around search engines. So how do we, if we think of Google as the biggest newspaper, how are we getting coverage on that for our clients? Not just position one for brand or whatever that was the SEO team might want. We've got kind of coverage what the PR team might want. We've got Google News, we've got other slots we can media buy. How do we embrace the search results, and how do we embrace other digital publications so that we are driving the best outcomes for clients not in a siloed way, but in an integrated way. So each channel that we manage, they help each other. They've got their own benefits, and some clients might want them in isolation, but in integration, that's an incredibly fantastic yet cheesy expression. 1 + 1 is 3, but that is true. If you're doing PR and you're doing SEO under the same roof, the outcomes are fantastic. You're optimizing. You're doing PR, you're integrating, and actually the result is that you have shared KPIs and shared outcomes across teams that work closely together to really kind of get a greater result than the individual parts for a client.
So if someone was coming to you then, Tom, and they were looking for a campaign, would you be recommending that, PR, online, offline, a mix of media? How would you go about actually designing something that gets them, I'm assuming, the most attention, the highest brand awareness, the most recruits, or whatever it is that company wants to do? What mix would you be advising, or how would you go about finding out the best mix?
So to find the best mix for us, it's about the client outcome, actually. So if a client will come to us and they will need coverage, if they're going through rounds of funding, if they're on a series run, that's one sort of outcome that they need. They might want sales, would approach it slightly differently for that. And like say if it's a charity for awareness, or got e-commerce, which is just growth in traffic and a unit sale. Each of those customers or clients will have a different outcome. And we work from small startups to kind of what we might call titans, big business, and that also has another dynamic of what those people want. Occasionally, we might be brought in to do just one thing, and then over time, the relationship will expand. But increasingly, we see clients coming to us and saying, "We want, this is what we want from you. How do you achieve this?" And how do we do that? To your question, it is really about we have each individual team or each individual specialism will look at the website or the media plan or the coverage or the relations and chip in. So we have deep specialisms in certain areas, and that will remain in that manner for forever. Tech SEOs are tech SEOs, and certain parts of media relations have got a certain core skill set, and those two people are different. But what we do in an integrated manner is approach centrally. So there are people in the team that will understand all disciplines at sort of account director, VP level, and it's up to them to try and understand the outcome, and then to use the specialisms of each team to hone them together into a combined media plan, which then we will roll out. It depends on the technology. It depends, and also big established, especially Titans, will have another 5 agencies on their roster as well. So we're very different. It is difficult approaching it. You don't often get like one size fits all. This is it. We're working. We often have a bit of this, a bit of that, to achieve the client's results. Most importantly for us, it's about measurement and data and analytics. So being very transparent is the most important thing. I think agencies get a bad rep sometimes for I don't think they make up stats, but they will give the stats to give the best outcomes, perhaps for the relationship, not necessarily for the client's own outcome success. It's a difficult question to answer because it is different for every single client. And that probably is one of the great learnings of integrated, is you don't just have, this is our approach, this is who we are, take it or leave it. There is a whole series of considerations depending on the maturity of their own marketing and their own comms plan.
I'm assuming, and again, keep me right, that Facebook, LinkedIn, any of the social media platforms allow you to target really specifically, and they will present back to you data and results around the particular campaign or whatever it is that you were doing. But offline doesn't allow you to do that, I'm assuming here. But so keep me right. Newspaper. How do you measure brand? How do you measure reach from a PR article? How do you measure empathy or sympathy or whatever it is you're trying to generate? Do clients find that difficult to understand that on one hand, you have infinite amount of statistics and can present the data in a particular way, but for all the above the line, non-digital work that you do, the statistics may not be as complete, but certainly the work is absolutely required to give them that integrated approach.
Yeah, and reporting is, has evolved so much in the 20 years I've been digital, which I look every one of those 20 years, I do know. I would say that reporting's evolved and has got incredibly complex over the years. But I would also say that the knowledge, and especially in the last 5 years, kind of knowledge, client knowledge is a lot more granular than it used to be. And yeah, there are certain things we can't track, and there are certain tools we might use to track brand sentiment, but they're all subjective to the way the tools produce. But you've got to draw a line somewhere. Now we, traditionally in PR, it will be coverage, and what coverage have we got? What's the coverage book looking like? How, and how wide have we gone? How on point are we with the original brief? That's hard to digitize. We do draw that into dynamic reports. Using various tools just to try and digitize as much as possible. But that's also tangible as well. So one of the nice things about PR results is if you get good coverage, it comes in the coverage book, you see it, client can click on it, they can look at the newspaper or the online article, the link, whatever that might be, the blog, and be pleased. And interestingly, digital, if you can take digital in inverted commas, is more transparent, but actually sometimes things are quite hard to pick apart because there's so much data. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, really. So like look at organic traffic. Google doesn't give a great deal away. We don't know which key phrase did what. We get a bit out of Search Console, but we can't completely say we've been working on these areas and it's generated that much money for you from organic, because we see this sort of broad sword view. We can see what rank happens and with our key phrases that we're targeting, the groups, be it content level or evergreen kind of pages or product pages, whatever. But we have to. There will always be an element of insight over the top, and that's where your agency or your in-house team should be providing the value. And that's tough. And come to the last question about how long's a piece of string. Reporting, you could do reporting for as much as you do activity. It goes on and on and on. So you have to draw a line somewhere. And no one wants a 50-slide PDF once a month. People just want to know what happened, what's about to happen, and that you're on it.
Has COVID and the move to digital working or digital being, now that everybody's on Zoom or other applications, everybody's moved online, how has that impacted you and the agency and the work that you actually do, this increase in knowledge or need?
I think there is a definite, especially in lockdown, people read more for sure. So I think there was a definite increase in knowledge there. I think certain brands perhaps needed to become more digital faster. So the marketing teams in those brands, perhaps some sales, increased their knowledge. For what we do, I don't think it changed massively. I just think people are much more digitally savvy because it's so much more prevalent, and I've been in agency land since the late noughties, and before that I was kind of client side in .coms, and then I think the volume of data and the volume of stuff to learn grows faster than you can usually learn it and do your day job. But I do think there's a sort of saturation now that people seem to be catching up for across the board.
You're a global agency. How do you find that actually benefits your client? Is it that you've pockets of excellence in places now that everybody's digital, you can get the staff that you need, you can train them? Is it that it's just cheaper to do because you've got a cheaper resources? Or how do you actually use a global skill set, and why does that give you an advantage over, say, for example, a non-global agency?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really great question. I think there's probably a stigma around using a global agency, and you think it comes with a global tab as well, and it doesn't necessarily. I mean, if you want to use every office, you can, but that depends on why you're doing it. Benefits for us, of course, time zone when we're running social. Now we've got a big spectrum of time where we can activate for clients. So we go from Amsterdam to San Francisco and LA, and across that region we have a big breadth of talent and a big breadth of ability to execute across different times of the day and to react. And especially as a comms business, that's really important. We've got a number of clients that are perhaps European or American clients have a large presence in Europe, or vice versa, and maybe they've got the EMEA headquarters in Amsterdam or London. We have a that allows us, and our teams in New York and San Francisco, we work seamlessly. So actually we can kind of manage the process across all. With recruitment, we tend to recruit around our offices. We have people that aren't necessarily in an office. They might have a base office and they could live a little bit away from it. Some of my team don't live. My team spreads in San Francisco. We've got London and Cornwall, but I've got some team members that not necessarily in those locations, but will go into the office. They're near enough. So I think for us globally, it's a mindset thing, it's a time zone thing, a language thing, and cultural as well. And even between us and here in the UK and into the US, there are massive subtleties. That seems like an oxymoron, but in the way that we work and the accents and the way we spell things and the way we do things, culture is very different, and it's important to have people in both sides that understand culturally what's going on in those areas. Depending on where you are, there's different nuances to recruitment, and people in San Francisco, you could live in San Francisco and work for a company in Manchester, and that's great, but there's a lot of kind of localization to those jobs that we will have to compete against in a job market. So therefore, as an agency, we'll have to provide incredible career experience, and the idea of the things that we can control, the money, brains, and love are probably three things we can control in the world, and how do we manage those levers to make sure that the experience of working with us is so good that you want to stay and you want to drive your career further.
Where do you see the future of agencies? What does that look like in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think it comes down to creativity, and I think creativity might be an overused word, but we have. So one of our teams runs a lot of paid activity and especially using either search through Google, Bing, or social. Now in social, a lot of the algorithms are getting incredibly good, and a lot of the network's own setups they're catching up with the manual approach of how we run our campaigns, or have always had to. So what differentiates at that point? If you've got a computer that can optimize for you faster than the human can, what's the role of the agency? And that's a really good example. That is probably the most kind of severe example. And then it comes back to creativity. Again, like we talked about earlier, what's your underlying plan? What's your underlying hook? What you're trying to do? If you're doing online, offline, or whatever, what is that thing? Well, actually, then it comes back to the creativity of that idea and the creativity of what you're doing, that the algorithms can't come up with, and creating a really good, engaging campaign. And that's, I think, so creativity will become increasingly important for agencies, but they may not have had to before. They may have just inherited clients' creative and just executed. That's very common. We've been guilty of that a lot. But now we will have to be talking to the audience and understanding even more so. And performance agencies aren't like ad agencies in general, you know. So part of our, you could call paid search, paid social performance over traditional media, and actually we might have traditionally executed a lot more of clients' own creative, and now we're going to have to be part of that process. So it actually expands our remit, but also it humanizes what we're trying to do.
Tom, for those people who want to get in touch with you or your agency, what would be the best method to find out a little bit more?
Website clarity.pr is our website, or just look me up on LinkedIn, which is just Tom Telford, and would always be around. Send me an email. The irony of just saying that, I've been saying get too many emails, but definitely send a message. We'd love to hear from you. All our contact details to the various offices are on the website, and yeah, lovely bunch of people on the other end of an email or phone, and yeah, always around to talk.
Okay, so from San Francisco, Chicago, and Cornwall, thank you so much indeed for taking the time to talk today. That was absolutely fantastic. I appreciate that a lot.
Thanks for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. Really enjoyed it.